Hello again. So I have completed the Chicago Marathon. It's been just about a week since I completed that race. Got pretty busy with work last week, so wasn't really able to make a video about it, but wanted to make sure I got a video up there about how my experience was, how everything went for me. So here's the medal. Now I got 2 of the 6 stars. The problem is all the rest of them are much harder to get to. 3 of them are in other countries, and the other one is Boston, which to get a Boston qualifying time is very difficult. But first things first, the weather did not conspire against me, and I have a new personal best in the marathon. Finally. So in a real race, I was able to finish in 3 hours, 26 minutes, and 22 seconds. So my A goal for this race was under 3:20, and my B goal was going to be under 3:30, where my previous personal best was 3:34. So I was actually able to get under my previous personal best by 8 minutes, so I'm very happy with that. I'll get into more details about kind of how everything went. So I flew in on that Friday, and the first thing I noticed, as you can see kind of from the picture here, Chicago was very flat. They told me that it was very flat, but as I was flying in, I'm like, that looks nice. So that's very flat the whole way through. I mean, even in New York, the New York City Marathon, when it's mostly flat, it's still kind of rolling hills and undulating, where Chicago pretty much is just flat. I also went to the expo the day that I flew in because I figured it would be less crowded than going on Saturday, the day before the race. However, it was still pretty crowded in the afternoon on Friday. I'll show some footage of when I showed up to the expo. There was also a very long line for everything there, pretty much. Actually checking in was easy, and getting your shirt at the other side was easy. But in between there was kind of a minefield of every running thing you could ever want from any brand. Literally every brand was there. Every shoe company had a area set up where you could test out shoes or buy shoes to wear for the race. But what's that cardinal rule? Nothing new on race day. Hopefully nobody bought a brand new pair of shoes and used it for the first time in that race, because that's a recipe for blisters and things not going away. I actually resisted the urge to spend money at the expo, but that was mainly just because I didn't want to stand in line. The line for Nike stuff was incredibly long. Everything's full price. I'm thinking maybe I'll be able to pick up some of this stuff on discount after the fact. Also, I saw there was a Goose Island thing set up there where you can get some beer, but that also had a giant line. So I'm like, yeah, I'm not in the mood for waiting on lines right now. So I made my way around, looked at the different areas. I stopped by the Adidas area and asked them if they had any Adios Pro 4s hiding back there, and they didn't. They confirmed that, that's not going to come out till next year. One thing that's a nice tip if you're in Chicago for the marathon weekend is you can actually get a Metro card, essentially, to use their buses and trains, and you can get a 3-day pass for $15. So that's pretty good. So that basically, when I got to the airport, I was able to take the train directly to the downtown city area where my hotel was, and also take the train back to the airport after the race. And I also took the train kind of more downtown to where the expo was. But the problem with that is the train goes north and south, but it doesn't really go east and west. So you'd have to transfer to a bus. And I was like, you know what? I don't feel like waiting for a bus. It's like about a mile walk to the expo, so let me just walk it. But then, conventional wisdom is you shouldn't really walk that much in the days before a marathon. But I was like, it's just a mile. It's not that big a deal. And maybe I'll take a bus when I leave there. Leaving the expo, it was a mess. There was so many people there at that time. There was a bus stop right there, but there was like hundreds of people waiting. And I'm like, all right, I'm just walking again. And like the line to get an Uber or a taxi was insane. So definitely very crowded at the expo. And anyone who's watching my channel probably knows who Kofuzi is. He's one of the biggest reviewers on YouTube for running. Reviews a lot of shoes. He's from the Chicago area, so I assumed that he'd have a shakeout run before the Chicago Marathon, and I was right about that. So I was able to find he did have a shakeout run, so I'll show some footage from that. So I actually got to meet Kofuzi. That was cool. Got to take a selfie with him. I'll show the picture there. He definitely had no idea who I was, so still a small channel, but it was cool to meet him. I congratulated him on getting his 6th star and said thanks for the inspiration. And then went on the shakeout run. So it's just pretty much exactly 3 miles, kind of along the Chicago waterfront there, where I've seen that he's done a lot of videos. So that was actually kind of cool to be running in the place that Kofuzi runs. He also gave a little speech before the shakeout run, telling everybody that they've done everything that they need to do to prepare for this race and just to enjoy it the next day.
You're going to be able to do it. You've already put in the work. You guys are ready. Go out there and enjoy those 26 points. You're
things, this event was actually sponsored by ASICS and Fleet Feet. So they actually had demos of shoes there as well. They had the Super Blast 2, which I actually wore to the event. So I was wearing one of the shoes they were demoing, so I didn't need that. And they were also demoing the Metaspeed shoes, which I also have. So I didn't try any new shoes that day, but just did the 3 miles in the Super Blast 2. And that was kind of my shoe of the weekend that I did my walking around in, because I wanted one of those max cushion shoes to try and absorb the impact prior to the race. They also gave out shirts at that run, so I got a Kofuzi ASIC shirt, and at the end there was pancakes. So it's pancakes on the back there. Although one thing I noticed as soon as they gave us the shirt, it says Chicago 2025. It's 2024. So whoever printed this messed up, but it is kind of a cool shirt, and maybe it's a collector's item because it has the wrong year on it. I wasn't sure whether I was going to bring my GoPro along for the race or not. It says you're not supposed to, but I know that people do. But I was concerned about maybe having it confiscated at the start, so I ended up not bringing it. Also, I was going to try and really do a good race this time, so I didn't want to be distracted by that. I did get the race photo, so I'm going to put up some photos during the race of what was going on during the race for me. I'll also, before I get into that, I'll play this short video from them that kind of shows some highlights of the race and what my finishing time was. So I'll show some pictures from the start here. Anyone who's done one of these world major events, these big city marathons, know that it's kind of organized chaos. They try and do a really good job of filtering people through, getting to the right place. I actually didn't bother doing bag drop. I didn't want to deal with that. So I ended up, also my hotel was about a mile from the start line. So again, I thought about maybe riding a bike there or taking the train there. But eventually I was just like, I'll just walk. It's really not that far. And then I don't have to worry about waiting in the station and worrying when the train's going to come. So I ended up in the morning of, there's also a lot of places to get food around there. I went to a Whole Foods, so I had a couple of like chocolate croissants. So I had a little bit of sugar, a little bit of carbs, and I drank a liter of water with some electrolytes that I use. And then really had to go to the bathroom by the time I got there. So I did use a porta potty right away, then went over to my corral, sat there for about a half an hour, then had to go to the bathroom again. Then when the race was about to start, I saw that they did have a 320 pace group in my corral. So my plan was to try and stay with that pace group at the start. Also, anybody who's looked at Chicago before knows that those first couple miles, you don't get really good GPS reception. I don't know why it's giving a thumbs up right there. You don't get really good GPS reception. So I wanted to kind of rely on the pace group to stay on pace. But if you look at this picture here, you can see how crowded it was at the start line there. It was really packed in. Something else that happened that was kind of funny too, right by Corral A, there was kind of breaks in the fence where Corral A would have entered. So it was right before the race, all the waves kind of moved up and some people left and were just like going to the bathroom on trees and dumpsters and whatever they could find right outside of the fence. And I was like, you know what, I might have to go one more time, but I have some dignity. I don't want to be doing this like those people were. So I moved up a little bit farther in Corral A and I found there were porta potties outside. So I was able to jump back out and make sure I was ready to go when the race started. However, by doing that, I got a little bit behind where the pace group was to start. And once that kicked off, I really couldn't catch up to the pace group. It was, I I was in Corral E, which might have been a little bit low for me. I didn't fight it, when it came back, but there was definitely people going different paces. Some people were going slower at the start, and it was so packed in. It was really kind of hard to get up to speed. I thought I was actually running really slowly that first mile, but then looking at, according to Strava, I ran a 6:51 first mile, which is significantly faster than my goal pace. But I also think Strava is just wrong about that mile, because it didn't feel like I was running anywhere near that fast. So the GPS accuracy, I think, was messed up, for those first couple miles. But then I did kind of get right into the sweet spot of the 7:30s, which is exactly where I wanted to be. To do a sub 3:20, I need to average 7:37 for the race. So the first 9 miles are right where I need it to be. Then it ticks up a little bit, mile 10. The other thing that I was really happy with this race was it really looked like the mileage that I put in and the long runs that I did leading up to this paid off with my endurance. Looking at my heart rate during this race, it's in the 140s and 150s pretty much the entire time. So I was basically in zone 2, maybe dipping into zone 3 a little bit, which is my endurance zones, where I'm not pushing the pace here. I'm not going to have to worry about maxing out my heart rate and having to slow down. So the mileage that I did in the training helped me to maintain my goal marathon pace while staying at a good heart rate that was sustainable. So that's super important, in a distance race. Then I also have something here. When I get to mile 13, that was 7:42, and I noticed at that point I was at 141 and change for the half marathon. I really should have been at 140 if you want to have an even split for a 3:20. So I was only 1 minute behind my goal pace. So I knew I could make that up if I did well in the second half. I was kind of right where I needed to be. So the first half marathon, I kind of paced myself perfectly, showed up there with plenty of energy. My heart rate hadn't been stressed at that point. And I also have here, though, after mile 13, I tested positive for PEW, performance enhancing wife. So what I mean by that is, if you look at mile 13, I ran that in 7 minutes and 42 seconds. And then that's right when I saw my wife and ran to the sidelines there and gave her a kiss. And after that, I felt great. That put some spring in my step, and I ran mile 14, 6:59, which was one of the fastest miles of the race. So I had some performance-enhancing love there. Who needs super shoes when you have love in your life? I have to say, too, especially with the weather that we had that day, it started out kind of cool. It warmed up a little bit during the race and got a little bit humid, but it was nothing like what I've been training in over the summer. That was by far the best conditions that I've run a marathon in, so I was very happy about the weather for the race. I didn't bring any hydration with me, and I really didn't need it. I don't think I was sweating enough that I really needed to replace all that much. But also the water stations are great. I think it's basically every 2 miles along the way. The Gatorade Endurance is first, and then the water stations are after that. So I kind of took turns taking some Gatorade, taking some water. My fueling strategy, I took gels every 30 minutes. So I took 2 regular kind of electrolyte gels. The ones I use are E-Gel. I took those normal electrolyte gels a half hour in and an hour in, and then I did want to introduce some caffeine later in the race. I thought maybe I might need a little bit of boost around mile 20, so I took my first caffeine gel at an hour and a half, and then a second caffeine gel at 2 hours. Gotta say, I didn't really feel the caffeine this time. I find that with marathons, it doesn't seem to make that much of a difference to me, but overall, my fitness felt really good this whole race. I never felt tired. I never felt like I needed to slow down. I didn't walk at all during the race, so that was all highly positive. The one problem that I did have right around mile 20, my left knee started to bother me. I haven't ever really had issues with my knees. I've never had knee problems. I've never had knee injuries. After the last marathon that I ran, my knees did bother me for about 2 weeks. I think it was just runner's knee, too much exertion. So that's something where really during the training, you got to build up those miles and the long runs and your volume to avoid that type of injury. But my knee started bothering me around mile 20. So miles 20 through 24, my knee was bothering me. I slowed down a little bit. I still was in the the high 7s and then got into the 8s a little bit when my knee was really bothering me. But around mile 24, that pain kind of went away. There was also something in there that may have helped, may have been a placebo. But one of the sponsors for the race is BioFreeze. They're a company that makes like menthol type spray products where they'll spray it and it kind of cools it and tries to make it feel better. So after mile 20, I noticed they did have like a BioFreeze cooling zone. And I went to the side there and had them spray my knee real quick and then kept going. I don't know if that actually did anything, but maybe it gave me the mental healing that I needed. But around mile 24, the knee pain kind of went away and I was able to go fast again to the end of the race. So then I sped up to 8:14, 8:02. Mile 6 was a 7:45. And then I got up to really fast pace at the end. I was able to sprint to the finish, which was great because that's the first time I've been able to do that in a marathon.
There he is. Goes on.
By the time I got to mile 20 that I was not going to be breaking 3:20 that day, but I knew that it was well within reach to be under 3:30 and that I was definitely going to do it. So that also gave me some spring in my step for the end of the race there, where I knew I had 3:30. I just had to finish at the pace I was going, and I was going to be well under, which I ended up being. So again, it was a new personal best for me. So it wasn't my A goal, but it was my B goal, and it's still a personal best. So we can't hate on that. My Garmin also said that at the end of the race, my heart rate was a little bit higher than I think it actually was. I think the settings might have been off a little bit there. But one thing I did notice too when crossing the finish line and looking at the finish line photos is that I caught up to some of the people that started in corrals ahead of me. I started in E, and I saw I was finishing at the same time as some people from D, C, and even B. So I think there were some people that started in earlier corrals and maybe hit the wall and had to walk a bit. So I caught up to some people who started about 20 minutes before. We talk a lot about mantras, like things that can help you to say to yourself when you're doing something hard like this. So I had two. One of them was inspired by a sign that I saw along the way. Someone was holding a sign that said, "For Frodo." And I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan. That's at the end of the Return of the King, where Aragorn runs with his sword, into certain death. So that one kept me going a little bit. I was like, for Frodo as I'm running, because I'm a big dork. The other one was a bit Matrix inspired. I was just thinking to myself, I saw something, I forget what the percentage is. It's like over 60% of people are going to hit the wall in a marathon, and that people that are, elite runners say that there is no wall. Like that's a myth. So I was thinking of channeling Neo a little bit and saying to myself, there is no wall, like there is no spoon. So I was thinking there is no wall as I was getting closer to the end of the race. And I think really if you're well prepared, you can avoid it. You need to make sure that you fuel and hydrate. And if you train properly, there is no wall. I'll share one other finish line photo as a cautionary tale. I feel bad for this guy. This has happened to me before, but not in a major race. So we can see what happened there. Chafing is your enemy. You gotta make sure you do what you can. Test out those clothes before the race. Make sure they're fitting well. If you have a loose fitting shirt, you're more likely to get chafing, especially once you start sweating. One thing that I do, again, not sponsored by these, Nippies. These are basically little stickers that you can put on that prevent that from happening. So I make sure that I wear those for any long race. I also use kind of like a roll-on anti-chafe in any place where I think that might be a problem for me. So that's some pro tip. Make sure you get things covered and things lubed up so that you're not going to have that issue. I also had some custom bib boards made for the race with my logo on that there. Nobody noticed it or said anything because nobody knows who I am. But I was fun to be able to have my own bib boards for the race. Also, I do have a discount code for bib boards if you have any interest in getting these. It's 20% off. I'll put that in the video description. But these just work great for holding on a bib. You don't have to worry about it. It's not a magnet. It doesn't fall off. It doesn't chafe. It doesn't rip your clothes, so I think these just work. So I use these for every race. I have them in a couple different colors and types. They have them with all different types of sayings and designs, and you can even get custom ones like this. So if you had like a company logo or a saying that you were looking to do, you could get custom ones made. Anyone who watched my videos leading up to this race knows that I really went back and forth with what shoe I was going to wear and tried a bunch of the current shoes. The Asics Metaspeed Edge Paris, I think, is the fastest carbon plate shoe around right now, but I was a little concerned about the stability in that one since it's narrow in the heel. The Puma shoe is a little bit more forgiving, a little bit more stable, but also pretty narrow in the heel. I was concerned about taking that one long. Then both the Saucony and the New Balance are a little bit more stable, a little bit more supportive, but didn't feel as fast to me. So I actually went with a new version of the Adidas Adios Pro 3. I wore the older version up there for the New York City Marathon in 2022, so I didn't really want to use a 2-year-old shoe with over 100 miles on it. But when I was thinking about this shoe again, I actually went to Adidas's website, and this colorway, they had my size for 50% off. So it's a $250 shoe. I was able to get it for $125. So I was like, this is fate. I'm supposed to wear this shoe for this marathon for $125. So I put about 28 miles on these before the race. I wanted to just break them in a little bit. So I did like a marathon pace long run, another run before the actual race. But what I really like about the Adios Pro 3 is it's kind of a nice middle ground as far as the super shoe goes. It's not the most aggressive. It's not the fastest, but it might be one of the most stable. And the way that Lightstrike Pro foam works is it's kind of more dense than a lot of these other types of foams, where you don't sink into it too much. It does give you a decent amount of energy return, but it's kind of more progressive, more kind of cruisy than I would say fast. So for me, that really worked out well when I'm trying to run a marathon pace where I'm not trying to push at my absolute top speed. With those big city marathons, there's lots of stuff on the ground, especially when you're passing by aid stations. One thing that I noticed was they had the Gatorade Endurance formula first, and something that happens, you can actually kind of see it on the shoe a little bit here. It's sticky because when people drink that Gatorade and throw those cups on the ground, you're basically running through a sugary, sticky mess. So one strategy that I used after that was make sure I get close to the water tables, even if I wasn't going to take water, because then there's puddles of water on the ground that you can kind of run through and get the sticky stuff off the bottom of your shoe. So random tip, but if you're running through Gatorade and finding your shoes are a little too sticky, run through the water next to try and clean them off. The shoe did exactly what I wanted to do. It was supportive for me. It helped me maintain my marathon pace. I didn't have any blisters, no hot spots, no rubbing. It just did what I needed to do for that race. Get me through the 26.2. I was able to push the pace a little bit, and the shoe was there for me. So a little bit about the post-race. How did that go for me? So right when you cross the finish line, something that's kind of annoying with all these big races, you can't leave. There's so many people finishing. You have to kind of walk through that whole chute as they're giving you all the stuff. You get the medal and the blanket and the water and the bananas and all the stuff they're giving out. One thing that I liked at the end of this one, they give you Goose Island beer right at the finish. So I drank a little bit of water and then I had a beer, which is probably not the best thing to do when you just finished a marathon. But hey, I just ran a marathon. I can have a beer. There's a picture of that. But you have to walk for a while. I was trying to find my wife. In the park, you walk towards the main area. One thing I liked that they did, they had like these big columns with letters on them, so you could go to tell someone I'm standing by column A, and they could find you there. So I was able to find my wife and get out of the park, and then we had to walk back to the hotel. That's the part that sucks the most after a marathon, when you just finished this and now you gotta, it was probably about a mile back to the hotel. We could have maybe found an Uber or something, but around that time it's so crowded and, you know, the damage has been done. So walking kind of gingerly at that point, you know, my left knee was bothering me a little bit. You know, that set in after the end of the race. Anytime you got to take stairs, go upstairs, downstairs, stepping off of curbs, it's like, oof, you know, that I just did something here. So I was able to go back to the hotel, and I took a shower, and then I iced my my left knee for a little while. We did have a little bit of time, so we went to get lunch after that, and then went back to the airport that day. So I put ice on my knee right away, and when I got out of the shower, I put on compression socks and wore those the whole rest of the day to try and help with recovery there. So once we made it to the airport, the flight wasn't until after dinner time, so I got delayed as well, so I didn't get home till, you know, almost midnight that night. But when I got off the plane back in New York and was trying to walk to my car, that's when it really set in, and I was not feeling great walking in the airport. I did have like a knee brace that I had brought, like one of those tight ones that I just put over that knee and kind of limped my way to the parking lot. So the day after, I made sure to ice my knee again. I do have a massage gun that I used, but the thing that was impressive to me was, other than that knee bothering me a little bit, I didn't really have any other issues. I didn't have a lot of tightness. My calves weren't bothering me. My hamstrings, my quads were fine. I took one day off after the race. Then the next day I got on the Peloton and did like a low impact Peloton ride. Just wanted to get some blood flowing through my legs. And then I did a 3-mile run the next day, and that felt absolutely fine. Then I think I did another Peloton, and then I did a 5-mile run yesterday just to try and get things moving again. So that was my last big race for the year. I don't have anything scheduled between now and the end of the year. I am going to, take a little bit of a break, but I'm still going to be running. I just won't be doing any 20-mile long runs in the foreseeable future. Now, just over a week out from the race, I'm really feeling 100% recovered. Everything's fine. Nothing's bothering me. No major injuries to report home about. So I think that the increasing the volume that I did in training and doing those several really long runs, I did a couple 22 milers during this build up, and I think that really helped with that durability. Something that I'm going to focus on too before my next marathon is doing more strength and conditioning. Usually when I'm doing strength and conditioning, I'm giving my legs a break, and I might be doing upper body training, but I want to try and do some more stabilization type things with weights for my lower body as well, because that's you got to build those marathon proof legs. I'm at 900 something subscribers to my channel right now. I'm hoping to see if I can get to 1,000 before the end of the year. So if you thanks for watching the video. If you haven't liked and subscribed, please do. Let me know if you ran any of the recent marathons. I know this is marathon season. There's a lot of big races. New York's coming up in a couple weeks. I know some people are running that race as well. So let me know how your races went. If you were able to PR this year, what your goals are, and I wish everybody the best of luck in their races the rest of the year, and let's get it done.